The colony ship Endeavour moved slowly through the dark space of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Daniel Price stood at the control center and watched the computer screens. His team had traveled for 3 years looking for a new home for humans. Now they had finally found something good. The planet below them looked beautiful. It had blue oceans and green land. White clouds covered parts of it. The air was good for breathing. There was water everywhere. Many plants and animals lived there. It seemed perfect for building a human colony. Lieutenant Karen Martinez sat at her workstation. She looked at the heat sensors on her screen. Something strange showed up in the northern part of the planet. Large animals were giving off heat signals, but they were not moving around like normal animals do. "Captain, you need to see this. We found big life forms in the north. The science team should check this out." Dr. Helen Carter came to the control center a few minutes later. She was the lead animal scientist on the ship. She had wanted to find alien life for 30 years. Her hands shook a little as she looked at the pictures on her computer tablet. These heat signals are huge. Whatever these things are, they are 4 times bigger than the largest hunters on Earth. Look at where they are. They are not hunting or walking. They are just resting out in the open with nothing to hide them. Captain Price looked worried. On Earth, big hunting animals did not sleep where other animals could see them. They always found caves or hills or thick plants to protect themselves, but these creatures were lying in flat grassland like they had nothing to fear. Lieutenant Greg Sullivan spoke from his desk. "Maybe they do not need to hide. If they are that big and nothing else is bigger, why would they worry about danger?" Dr. Carter shook her head. "That is not how life works. Even the strongest hunters have weak times. Baby animals get sick. Adults get hurt. There should be some kind of protection when they sleep. Unless something else is keeping them safe." Everyone in the control center became quiet. They all understood what this meant. If these huge hunting animals felt safe enough to sleep in the open, either this planet was very different from Earth, or something they had not seen yet was protecting the animals. "Send down a spy drone." Captain Price gave the order. "We need to see what is down there before we decide to land. The drone should only watch. Do not get close to anything." The drone left the ship 1 hour later. It was small and quiet with many cameras. It flew down through the air, pushing through strong winds. When it came below the clouds, the team on the Endeavour saw the creatures for the first time. They were amazing and scary at the same time. Each creature had 6 legs and a smooth body covered in dark scales that shined in the sunlight. Their heads were massive with strong jaws that could break metal. Sharp claws as long as human arms came out and went back into their feet. Their eyes were closed in sleep but still looked smart and aware. Next to the big adults were baby animals. The babies were smaller but still larger than big cats on Earth. They slept peacefully against their parents. Their breathing was slow and calm. They had no idea that humans were watching them from far above. Captain Price moved closer to his screen. Something felt wrong about the whole scene. It was not dangerous. Just wrong in a way he could not explain. "Make the camera show more area," he told the drone operator. "I want to see what is around them." The drone camera pulled back to show the grassland spreading in all directions. Groups of plant-eating animals were eating grass far away. They knew the hunting animals were there but did not run. Birds flew in circles above. Everything looked normal and calm. But as the drone kept scanning, Lieutenant Martinez saw something odd. "Captain, I am getting strange energy readings. They are very weak and almost hidden in the background noise, but they are arranged in a circle around the sleeping hunters." Dr. Carter's eyes went wide. She put the patterns into her analysis computer. She compared them to natural things like rocks and weather. Nothing matched. These were not from nature. They were too regular and too purposeful. "Someone is watching them," she said quietly. "Someone is standing guard while they sleep." The words made everyone feel strange. They had come to this planet thinking it was empty of thinking beings. Now they realized other intelligent creatures were already here, and those creatures were doing something humans understood very well. They were protecting animals that could not protect themselves. Captain Price sat down in his chair. His mind was racing with questions. Who were these watchers? Why were they protecting wild hunting animals? What would they think about humans coming to their planet? "Get me better scans," he ordered his crew. "I want to know everything about those energy signals. Where they are. What is making them? How many there are. We need to understand what we are dealing with before we make any more moves." For the next 2 days, the Endeavour stayed in orbit while the crew studied the planet below. The drone made many trips, each time getting more information. The energy signals were always there. They formed perfect circles around sleeping hunting animals. They moved when the animals moved. They never went away. Dr. Carter spent hours watching video from the drone. She saw the hunting animals wake up and go looking for food. She saw them play with their babies. She saw them rest in the hot sun. And every time they slept, the energy signals appeared around them like invisible guards. Lieutenant Martinez worked on improving the sensors. Finally, on the 3rd day, she got a clear reading. The energy signals were not just energy. They were living things, beings that could hide themselves from most types of scans. But they were there, standing watch in a perfect defensive pattern. Captain Price called a meeting of his top officers. They gathered in the conference room and looked at all the data spread across the big screen on the wall. "We have a decision to make," the captain said. "This planet has everything we need for a colony. Good air, water, land. But it also has intelligent life that we did not expect, and that life is actively protecting the dangerous animals here. We need to decide what to do next." Lieutenant Sullivan looked at the tactical data. From a safety view, these watchers are organized and disciplined. Their positioning shows military training. They know how to protect something effectively. "We should be careful, but they have not attacked our drone," Dr. Carter pointed out. "They have detected it for sure. Nothing that organized would miss a flying machine in their space. Yet they have done nothing aggressive. Maybe they are curious about us too, or maybe they are waiting to see what we do," Lieutenant Martinez added. "If they are protecting these hunting animals, they might be worried we will hurt them. We need to show we mean no harm." Captain Price thought for a long time. His mission was to find a home for humans. Earth was getting too crowded. People needed new places to live. But he did not want to start humanity's expansion into space by making enemies or destroying something valuable. "We make contact," he finally decided. "But we do it carefully. A small team will land far from the sleeping animals and the watchers. We will make ourselves visible and wait. If these beings want to talk to us, they can approach. If they want us to leave, we will respect that." "This is their planet first," the crew agreed. It was risky, but it seemed like the right thing to do. They had come looking for a new world. Instead, they had found something more interesting. A mystery about sleeping hunting animals and the invisible protectors who kept them safe through the night. The landing shuttle carried 3 people down to the planet's surface 2 days later. Lieutenant Karen Martinez sat in the pilot seat, controlling the ship carefully. Dr. Helen Carter checked her equipment in the back. Corporal Jake Morrison sat ready, though he carried no visible weapons as ordered. They landed in an open field 5 kilometers away from where the hunting animals slept. The grass was tall and green. The air smelled clean and fresh. In the distance, they could see mountains rising against the blue sky. It would have been a perfect place for a colony if they had been alone. "Now we wait," Martinez said as she shut down the shuttle engines. "We make ourselves visible and see what happens." The 3 humans stepped out of the shuttle and stood in the open grass. They did not hide. They did not try to sneak around. They simply waited, hoping the watchers would decide to make contact. They did not have to wait long. Within 1 hour, they saw movement in the grass ahead of them. A figure appeared walking toward them with smooth and easy movements. As it got closer, the humans got their first clear look at the beings who protected this world's hunting animals. The watcher stood about 2 meters tall. Its body was covered in hard shell-like skin that changed colors to match the grass and sky. It had 4 arms, each one ending in hands that looked both delicate and strong. Its head was shaped differently from humans, with large eyes that had many surfaces like insect eyes. But those eyes showed clear intelligence and awareness. The being stopped 10 meters away from the humans. It made clicking sounds with its mouth and moved its body in what seemed like a greeting. Its manner showed curiosity rather than fear or anger. Dr. Carter turned on her translation device. The machine was built to learn new languages by listening and watching. It would take time to understand this being's speech, but they had to start somewhere. She pointed to herself slowly. "Human. We come in peace. We mean no harm." The being tilted its head to one side as if thinking. Then it touched one of its 4 arms to its chest and spoke a single word. The translation machine did its best and showed the word as keeper on the small screen. Over the next few hours, they worked on understanding each other. The keeper's language was complicated. It used sounds, body movements, and what seemed like smell to communicate. Each word could mean different things depending on how it was said. But slowly, very slowly, they began to understand each other. The translation machine got better as it learned more. Dr. Carter asked careful questions. Lieutenant Martinez took notes on everything. Corporal Morrison watched for any signs of danger, though the keeper seemed completely peaceful. As the sun moved across the sky, a picture of the keepers and their work began to form. They were part of an old organization that covered many star systems. Their only purpose was to protect living things that were in danger of dying out completely. They had been doing this work for thousands of years. The huge hunting animals the humans had seen were called Scarix. They were some of the most dangerous hunters in this part of space. They could kill almost anything. Their strength and speed made them perfect predators. But they were also almost gone forever. Years ago, there had been many Scarix on several worlds, but other species had destroyed their homes. Sickness had killed many. Some species had hunted them for sport or profit. The Scarix population had dropped lower and lower until very few remained alive. The keepers had made this entire northern part of the planet into a protected area. Here the Scarix could live and have babies without fear. The keepers made sure no one hunted them. They watched over the animals day and night. They helped when sickness came. They protected the weak and the young. The baby animals you saw represent hope for us. The keeper explained through the now better translation system. 5 years ago, fewer than 100 Scarix remained alive anywhere. Now, because of our protection, the population has grown to 300. In another generation, they may be strong enough to return to their original homeworlds. Lieutenant Martinez asked the question that was bothering all of them. But why do you watch them while they sleep? Adult Scarix must be able to defend themselves. The keeper's body language changed in a way that seemed sad. Adult Scarix are very strong, yes, but the babies are weak and vulnerable. The adults know this. In the past, before their numbers fell so low, Scarix groups would have their own guards. They would take turns watching while others slept. Now, with so few left, they cannot spare the energy for guard duty, so we stand watch for them. We make sure that when they wake up, all are safe. It is the smallest thing we can do for beings who have already lost so much. Dr. Carter felt tears in her eyes. She had studied animals her whole life. She had seen many species go extinct on Earth before humans learned to protect them properly. Now on an alien world, she was meeting beings who understood what she had always believed, that every life form had value, that losing any species made the universe a poorer place. We understand, she told the keeper. On our world, humans also work to protect animals that are dying out. We have not always done this. We made many mistakes. We let many species disappear forever. But we learned. Now we try to save what we can. The keeper seemed interested in this. It asked many questions about Earth and human conservation work. Dr. Carter told them about national parks, wildlife preserves, and breeding programs for endangered species. She showed them pictures on her tablet of elephants, tigers, whales, and other animals that humans had brought back from near extinction. The keeper watched and listened carefully. Then it said something that surprised all three humans. Your species is young and sometimes violent. We have seen this in the information your ship broadcasts. You make wars. You destroy your own environment. But you also have something we have lost over our long existence. What is that? Martinez asked. The ability to adapt quickly, to act fast when needed, to find new solutions to old problems. The keepers have existed for 10,000 of your years. We are patient and careful. We follow our methods and traditions. But sometimes, by the time we decide to act, it is too late. The Scarix nearly died out because we spent 3 years debating the proper way to help them. 3 years while they suffered and died. Your species would have acted immediately. You would have found a way to help, even if it was not the traditional way. Corporal Morrison spoke for the first time. Are you saying you want our help? The keeper's body language showed what seemed like hope. We are asking if you would be willing to work with us. You could establish your colony on the southern part of this planet, far from the Scarix sanctuary. In exchange, we would teach you our methods of conservation and long-term thinking. You would teach us your adaptability and quick action. Together, we might save more species than either of us could save alone. The three humans looked at each other in amazement. They had come expecting to either find an empty planet or face conflict with whoever lived here. Instead, they were being offered partnership, a chance to learn from a species that had been protecting life for thousands of years. a chance to contribute their own knowledge and skills to something bigger than themselves. We need to discuss this with our captain, Dr. Carter said. But speaking personally, I would be honored to work with you. What you do here, protecting these animals, it is the most important work anyone can do. The keeper made a gesture that seemed like a bow. We will wait for your answer. But know this. Any species that looks at sleeping hunting animal babies and wonders what is keeping them safe rather than how to exploit them is a species worth knowing. We have watched you observe the Scarix. Your first thought was not to hunt them or study them or fear them. It was to wonder what protected them. That tells us about your character. As the sun began to set, the keeper walked back toward the sanctuary. The three humans returned to their shuttle and prepared to go back to the Endeavor. They had much to report to Captain Price. A whole new possibility had opened up, one that none of them had imagined when they first detected those sleeping predators. Martinez started the shuttle engines. Carter organized her notes and recordings. Morrison sat quietly, thinking about what the keeper had said about human nature. Yes, humans could be violent and destructive, but they could also be protective and creative. Maybe that was exactly what the galaxy needed. As they lifted off from the surface, Dr. Carter looked back at the grasslands below. Somewhere down there, Scarix cubs were settling down to sleep, and around them, both keeper and now potentially human watchers would stand guard through the night. It was a simple thing, an act repeated countless times across countless worlds, but it meant everything. It meant that some beings in the universe believed life was worth protecting, that the strong should defend the weak. That extinction was not inevitable if someone cared enough to prevent it. The shuttle climbed higher, breaking through the clouds and heading for orbit. Inside, three humans carried news that would change not just their mission, but potentially the entire direction of human expansion into space. They had come looking for land to colonize. They had found something far more valuable: purpose. Captain Daniel Price called an emergency meeting as soon as the landing team returned to the Endeavor. Every senior officer gathered in the conference room. The weight of the decision they faced pressed down on all of them. Dr. Carter presented everything they had learned about the Keepers and the Scarix. She showed videos of the meeting. She played recordings of the Keeper's voice. She explained the offer of partnership in detail. Lieutenant Sullivan was the first to speak. We should find another planet. The galaxy is huge. Surely there is another good world we can reach. Chief Engineer Lisa Wong shook her head sadly. Our fuel is running lower than we planned. The Endeavor can make one more big jump through space. Maybe two if we are very lucky. After that, we are stuck wherever we are, so we have to decide now. Captain Price said. Do we take the Keeper's offer, or do we risk everything on finding another planet? The room fell silent. Everyone understood the danger. If they jumped to another system and found nothing suitable, they might not have enough fuel to keep searching. 3,000 humans were counting on them to find a home. Dr. Carter had been thinking about this problem since leaving the planet's surface. I think we are looking at this wrong. We do not have to choose between building a colony and protecting animals. The southern half of the planet is empty of Scarix. The Keepers said we could settle there. We get our colony and we get to learn from beings who have been doing conservation work for thousands of years. But what do we offer them? Captain Price asked. The Keepers are clearly more advanced than us. What could we possibly give them that they would value? They already told us. Lieutenant Martinez said. They want our adaptability, our ability to act quickly, our creativity in solving problems. They have the wisdom of age. We have the energy of youth. Together we might be stronger than either species alone. The debate continued for hours. Some officers worried about becoming dependent on alien technology. Others feared that humans might damage the Scarix sanctuary by accident. A few suggested that the Keepers might be tricking them somehow. But Dr. Carter kept returning to one simple fact. The Keepers had been watching humans watch the Scarix. They had seen that the humans' first instinct was concern for the sleeping animals' safety. That meant something. That said something important about both species. Finally, Captain Price made his decision. We accept their offer, but we do it carefully. We start with a small settlement. We prove we can live here without harming their sanctuary. We learn their methods and share our knowledge. If it works, we expand slowly. If it does not work, we still have enough fuel to try one more jump. The decision was made. Now came the hard work of building something new. Something that had never been tried before. a joint colony where two different species would work together toward a common goal. Over the next 6 months, the humans and keepers worked side by side. The keepers taught humans how to build structures that fit into the landscape instead of destroying it. They showed them how to generate power without pollution. They explained how to manage waste so that nothing harmful entered the environment. The humans brought their own skills to the partnership. They designed quick-build shelters that could be put up in days instead of months. They created flexible power systems that could adapt to changing needs. They found ways to recycle that the keepers had never considered, because they were too focused on traditional methods. The city they built together was like nothing seen before. Buildings grew up from the ground, incorporating living plants into their walls. Solar collectors that looked like flowers tracked the sun across the sky. Water systems cleaned and reused every drop. Gardens produced food using methods that enriched the soil instead of depleting it. They named the city New Haven. It sat on the southern coast, far from the Scarrick Sanctuary, but close enough that joint teams could reach the protected area quickly if needed. 3,000 humans settled into their new homes, amazed at what they had helped create. But the real work was happening along the border of the sanctuary. There, mixed groups of humans and keepers collaborated on projects that neither species could have done alone. Corporal Jake Morrison found himself leading security for the sanctuary. The keepers taught him their methods of watching without disturbing the animals. He taught them human tactics for responding quickly to threats. Together, they created a protection system that combined the best of both approaches. One night, 3 months after the colony opened, those combined methods were tested. A group of Scarrick's cubs had wandered beyond the normal boundaries of the sanctuary. They were chasing what looked like easy prey, but the prey was actually bait set by criminals who hunted rare animals for profit. The keepers detected the danger immediately. Their sensors picked up the illegal ship hovering in stealth mode. Their cameras showed the trap being set, but their rules required them to observe first, then plan carefully, then get approval before acting. By their calculations, the cubs would be captured within 2 hours. Morrison did not wait for approval. He grabbed Martinez and Carter, got a fast transport, and headed straight for the cubs' location. The keepers watched in shock as the humans simply acted without following any protocol. The human team reached the cubs just as the hunters were moving to capture them. Martinez used the transport speakers to play recorded Scarrick's alarm calls at high volume. Carter released a chemical spray that smelled like adult Scarrick's territory markers. The cubs, suddenly afraid and smelling what they thought were their parents nearby, ran back toward the safety of the sanctuary. The hunters, thinking they had stumbled into a group of angry adult Scarricks, abandoned their trap and fled in their ship. The whole rescue took less than 10 minutes from start to finish. Morrison reported back to the Keeper Command Center expecting to be disciplined for breaking protocol. Instead, the Elder Keeper studied his report with what the humans had learned to recognize as deep satisfaction. Remarkable, the Elder Keeper said. We would still be analyzing the situation and writing reports while the cubs were being taken away. You saw a problem and fixed it immediately. Morrison felt uncomfortable with the praise. We got lucky. If those had been adult Scarricks or if the hunters had been better armed, things could have gone very badly. Perhaps, the Elder Keeper replied. But fortune favors those who act. We keepers have become so careful that we often miss chances that require quick response. You have reminded us that sometimes the best plan is to simply do what must be done. After that incident, things changed. The keepers began adding human-style rapid response teams to their procedures. Humans learned the value of the keepers' careful observation and long-term planning. The partnership deepened from cooperation into real friendship. Dr. Carter spent her days working with keeper scientists. Together, they cataloged every species on the planet. They identified which ones might need protection in the future. They planned for problems that might not happen for decades but needed to be prepared for now. She showed the keepers Earth's history. She told them about species humans had saved and species they had failed to save. She explained how human determination had brought animals back from near extinction, even when resources were scarce. The keepers listened and learned. They began to see value in approaches they had thought were too risky or too aggressive. They understood that sometimes you had to take chances to save something precious. Captain Price watched all of this from New Haven. He sent regular reports back to Earth using long-distance communication. His messages spoke of a different future than anyone had imagined. Humans were not just spreading through space to take what they found. They were becoming partners in protecting and preserving what was already there. As the first year came to an end, something wonderful happened. The Scarix, who had mostly ignored both keepers and humans, began to change their behavior. They allowed the mixed teams to come closer. Cubs played near the edges of settlements. Adults watched with what seemed like curiosity instead of suspicion. The elder keeper offered an explanation. They recognize protection. They understand that when they sleep, guards watch over them. But more importantly, they sense the change in our purpose. Before we were caretakers running a preserve. Now we are defenders actively protecting what we love. The Scarix can feel that difference. Lieutenant Martinez stood watch one evening as the sun set over the grasslands. A group of Scarix cubs slept in a pile nearby while their parents rested. She felt the now familiar sense of protectiveness that had become natural to all the watchers, both human and keeper. A young keeper approached her station. "We have reports of a storm coming from the south. Should we wake the Scarix and guide them to shelter?" Martinez checked her weather instruments. The storm was still hours away and not particularly dangerous. "Let them sleep. We will monitor the situation and only intervene if truly necessary. They need to maintain their natural behaviors." The young keeper's body language showed approval. "You have learned our patience well, and you have learned our quick thinking." Martinez smiled. "We make a good team." That simple exchange summed up everything the partnership had become. Two species, different in almost every way, had found common ground in the most basic and important of goals. Protecting life, defending those who could not defend themselves, ensuring that the universe remained rich with the diversity of living things. 3 years after the Endeavor first detected those sleeping Scarix, New Haven had grown into a thriving city. 50,000 humans now called it home. Nearly as many keepers had moved there to work on joint projects. The city had become a model for how different species could live together. But the real success was not measured in buildings or population numbers. It was in the small daily moments that happened across the sanctuary and the city. It was in the relationships formed between beings who should have been strangers but had become partners. Commander Karen Martinez, promoted from her old rank, led mixed patrols every day. Human and keeper watchers stood side by side protecting not just the Scarix, but dozens of other species that had been brought to the sanctuary. She could now read keeper body language as easily as human facial expressions. Her team moved with a coordinated precision that only came from years of working together. On quiet evenings, she often thought about that first day when they had landed on this world. They had come expecting to find an empty planet to colonize. Instead, they had found something far more valuable. They had found purpose beyond mere survival. Dr. Helen Carter had become the leading expert on the planet's ecosystem. Her database was now used by scientists across 3 star systems. Other species studying conservation looked to her work as a model. But her greatest joy came from teaching the next generation. Human and keeper children learned together in mixed classrooms. They studied the same subjects. They played the same games. They grew up seeing each other not as aliens but as friends united by common values. When Carter watched them during break time, inventing games that used both species' different abilities, she felt hope for the future. This is how it should have been from the beginning. She told the elder keeper during one of their regular meetings. Different species with different methods but the same ultimate goal, protection instead of domination. The elder keeper's body language showed deep satisfaction. "Your species has given us a great gift, Dr. Carter. You reminded us why we started this work 10,000 years ago, not because of duty or tradition, but because every life has value and deserves a chance to continue. And you taught us patience and long-term thinking." Carter replied, "I would say that is a fair trade." Admiral Daniel Price, promoted from captain and now governor of New Haven, stood in his office looking out over the city. Through the large windows, he could see human buildings and keeper structures blended together. They existed in harmony with the natural landscape instead of dominating it. Beyond the city, the sanctuary stretched to the horizon. His latest report to Earth carried news that would change how humans approached space exploration. 3 more colony ships were being sent to systems where endangered species needed protection. The keepers had shared locations of dozens of potential sanctuaries. Places where human adaptability and creativity could make a real difference. But perhaps more importantly, Earth itself was changing. Inspired by what was happening here, conservation efforts had been strengthened across the home world. Species that had been considered doomed were now receiving help and attention. Humans had always been capable of great destruction. Now they were proving equally capable of great protection when shown how. Lieutenant Sullivan, now Price's chief of staff, entered the office. "Admiral, the evening patrol reports are in. Everything is quiet in the sanctuary. The Scarix population has reached 500 individuals. 20 new cubs were born this season." Price smiled with genuine happiness. 500. When we first arrived, the keepers hoped to reach 300 someday. Our combined methods really do work better than either approach alone. Sullivan nodded, then added something else. "There is more, sir. The evening shift reports that a group of adult Scarix deliberately moved their cubs closer to one of our watch posts. Then the adults left to hunt, leaving the cubs sleeping where our watchers could see them clearly." Price turned from the window in surprise. "They trust us that much now?" "It appears so. The keeper biologists say this behavior is completely new. In the wild, Scarix would never leave their young with another species. But they have observed us for years now. They know that when we stand watch, nothing harms their cubs." Price felt emotion rise in his throat. He had commanded ships and made decisions affecting thousands of lives. He had represented humanity in negotiations with an ancient alien civilization, but this simple gesture of trust from wild predators somehow meant more than all of it combined. Make sure those watchers understand how important their duty is tonight. Those cubs are more than just endangered animals. They are proof that trust can exist between different species. That protection goes beyond language and biology. News of the Scarix trust spread quickly through both human and keeper communities. It became a symbol of what the partnership had achieved. The sanctuary was no longer just a protected area managed by caretakers. It was a place where wild animals felt safe because they knew guardians watched over them. Other species in nearby star systems heard about the human-keeper partnership. Some were skeptical, others were curious. A few sent representatives to see if the reports were true. When they arrived and saw humans and keepers working together seamlessly, many requested similar arrangements for their own endangered species. The sanctuary expanded to include new species. Creatures from dying worlds found safe haven here. Each one brought its own challenges and requirements. But the combined expertise of humans and keepers proved capable of meeting those needs. Jake Morrison, now head of all sanctuary security, trained new recruits from both species. His methods combined keeper patience with human decisiveness. Young watchers learned when to observe carefully and when to act quickly. They learned that rules were important, but protecting life was more important than following protocol perfectly. One of his human students asked him a question during training. "How do you know when to wait and when to act?" Morrison thought about the night he had rescued those Scarix cubs. That was the moment that had changed everything. The moment when human instinct to act immediately had proven valuable. "You ask yourself one question," he told the student. "Will waiting make the situation better or worse? If waiting improves your chances of success, then wait. If waiting means something precious might be lost, then act." The keepers taught us to think ahead. We taught them to trust their instincts. Use both. The sanctuary became famous across multiple civilizations. Scientists came to study its methods. Diplomats came to observe how different species could cooperate. Artists came to capture its beauty. And always at its heart were the watchers. Humans and keepers standing guard over sleeping predators and other vulnerable creatures. Dr. Carter published a comprehensive guide to joint species conservation. It became required reading for anyone working in the field. But the most important chapter was not about science or logistics. It was about the philosophy behind the work. She wrote about how the keepers had almost lost hope before humans arrived, how their rigid adherence to tradition had made them slow to respond to crises. But she also wrote about how human recklessness could be dangerous without the tempering influence of keeper wisdom. The partnership works because each species provides what the other lacks, she explained. Keepers bring patience, experience, and systematic thinking. Humans bring adaptability, quick action, and creative problem solving. Neither is better than the other. Both are necessary for success. Commander Martinez stood watch on what had become a routine evening patrol. A young keeper named Swift Runner worked beside her. They had been partners for over a year now. They communicated as much through gesture and shared understanding as through words. Movement in the distance caught their attention. A group of Scarix cubs were playing, wrestling with each other in the tall grass. Their parents watched from nearby, relaxed and calm. It was a scene of perfect peace. "Do you remember when we first met?" Swift Runner asked through the translation device they both wore. "You humans seem so strange to us, so quick to act without thinking," Martinez smiled. "And you keepers seemed impossibly slow to us. We could not understand why you needed so much time to make decisions. Now we understand each other." Swift Runner's body language showed satisfaction. Sometimes speed is wisdom. Sometimes patience is strength. We have both learned this. As the sun set and the cubs settled down to sleep, Martinez and Swift Runner took up their watch positions. They would stand there through the night, alert and ready. And across the sanctuary, dozens of other mixed teams did the same. Human and keeper, working together, protecting life. Back in New Haven, families gathered for evening meals. Human parents told their children stories of Earth, while keeper parents shared tales of their ancient history. The children, growing up in this mixed society, found nothing strange about having friends with 4 arms or friends who walked on 2 legs instead of 6. Admiral Price watched the city lights come on as darkness fell. His communication device beeped with another message from Earth. More ships were being prepared. More partnerships were being formed. Humanity had found its place among the stars, and it was not as conquerors or colonizers alone. They were protectors, guardians, partners in the most important work any species could do. The work of preserving life. 5 years had passed since the Endeavor first detected sleeping Scarix on this world. The planet now had a new name. Everyone called it Sanctuary. It was a fitting name for a place dedicated to protecting life. The success of the human-keeper partnership had spread across the galaxy. News traveled from system to system. Stories were told about the world where 2 different species worked together to save endangered creatures. Many civilizations sent observers to see if the stories were true. What they found amazed them. They saw a city where humans and keepers lived side by side in complete harmony. They saw children of both species playing together without fear or suspicion. They saw conservation methods that combined the best of 2 very different approaches to protecting life. But most importantly, they saw the results. The Scarix population had grown from fewer than 100 to over 600. Cubs played safely in the grasslands. Adults hunted without fear of poachers or habitat destruction. The species that had been on the edge of extinction was now thriving. Other endangered species had also found refuge in the sanctuary. Flying creatures from a dying moon circled the skies. Ocean dwellers from a polluted world swam in protected waters. Plant species that existed nowhere else grew in carefully maintained gardens. Each one had a story of near loss and hopeful recovery. Dr. Helen Carter was now considered one of the greatest conservation biologists in known space. But she remained humble about her achievements. When asked about her success, she always gave the same answer: "I did not do this alone. None of us did. The keepers taught us patience and systematic thinking. We taught them flexibility and quick action. Together we created something neither species could have built alone." That is the real lesson here. Different does not mean incompatible. Sometimes different means complementary. Her words became a motto for the new era of space exploration. Humans were no longer focused solely on finding new worlds to colonize. They were looking for ways to help preserve the worlds that already existed. They were becoming partners in galactic conservation, rather than just another expanding civilization. Commander Karen Martinez had trained hundreds of watchers, both human and keeper. Her methods were now standard practice across 3 star systems. Young security officers learned to blend keeper observation skills with human quick responsibilities. They understood that protecting life required both patience and decisiveness. One evening, she stood at her usual watch post overlooking a group of sleeping Scarix. She had been doing this for 5 years now, and it never got old. Each night brought its own small moments of wonder. A cub rolling over in sleep. A parent gently grooming its young before resting. Birds settling in the grass nearby, knowing they were safe here. A young human watcher approached her position. His name was Kevin Chen, and he had been born on Sanctuary. This was his first solo night watch, though Martinez was nearby if he needed help. "Commander, everything is quiet. The cubs are sleeping. The adults are resting. Weather is clear. All systems normal. Martinez nodded with approval. Good. But remember, quiet nights are when we must be most alert. It is easy to relax when nothing seems wrong. That is when danger can slip past us. The young watcher returned to his post. Martinez watched him go with satisfaction. He represented the future, a generation that had grown up seeing humans and keepers as natural allies, a generation that understood conservation was not just a job but a calling. Admiral Daniel Price was preparing for retirement. His replacement, a younger officer named Commander Lisa Wong, was already learning the responsibilities of governing New Haven. But before he left, Price wanted to see one more sunrise over the sanctuary. He traveled to a watch post on the eastern edge of the protected zone. There, as dawn broke, he watched the Scarix wake up. The cubs stretched and yawned. The adults rose gracefully to their feet. They looked around, saw the watchers at their posts, and seemed to understand they had been kept safe through another night. The elder keeper joined him as the sun climbed higher. The ancient being moved slowly now, its body showing the weight of countless years, but its mind was still sharp and its dedication to the cause had never wavered. "You are leaving us," the elder keeper stated. "It was not a question, it is time," Price replied. "I am old and tired. New leadership will bring new energy and new ideas. That is how healthy societies work." The elder keeper's body language showed what humans had learned to recognize as deep emotion. "We are grateful for what you brought to our world, Admiral Price. Before your species arrived, we were losing hope. We followed our methods and traditions, but we were too slow to save many species. You taught us that sometimes rules must bend to serve life itself. And you taught us that quick action without wisdom is just recklessness." Price responded. "We needed each other. We still do. This partnership is bigger than any individual. It will continue long after both of us are gone." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the Scarix begin their day. A group of cubs started playing, chasing each other through the grass under the watchful eyes of their parents. It was a scene of pure life, unthinking and instinctive, possible only because others chose to protect it. Back on Earth, the story of Sanctuary had inspired a renewal of conservation efforts. Species that had been considered lost causes were now receiving serious attention and resources. Oceans were being cleaned. Forests were being protected and expanded. The sky was clearing as pollution controls took effect. Humans had looked to the stars and found a mirror. They had seen what could be accomplished when protection was valued as much as expansion, when preservation mattered as much as progress, when different species worked together instead of competing. The keeper civilization was also changing. For thousands of years they had worked alone, following traditions that had become rigid over time. Now they actively sought partnerships with other species. They shared their knowledge freely. They learned from others instead of assuming their methods were always best. New sanctuaries were being established on dozens of worlds. Each one followed the model developed on Sanctuary. Mixed teams of different species working together, combining various approaches and skills, learning from each other while protecting endangered life. Jake Morrison, now Deputy Director of Galactic Conservation Security, traveled between these new sanctuaries. He trained security teams and helped set up protection protocols. Everywhere he went, people asked him the same question. How did it start? How did humans and keepers first learn to work together? He always told them about that first night, about seeing predator cubs sleeping safely in the open, about wondering what kept them protected, about discovering the keepers standing silent watch, and about learning that protecting life was something that transcended species differences. It started with a simple question. He would explain, not how can we use this, or what can we take, but what is protecting them. That one question led to everything else, because it showed we cared about the right things. Years became decades. The first generation born on Sanctuary grew up and had children of their own. Those children knew nothing of a time when humans and keepers were strangers. To them, having friends with 4 arms was as normal as having friends with 2. They learned both languages from birth. They celebrated holidays from both cultures. The Scarix population reached sustainable levels. Plans were made to reintroduce them to their ancestral homeworlds, which had recovered from the damage that had driven them to extinction there. It would be done slowly and carefully with constant monitoring. But it would happen. The species would survive. Dr. Carter lived to see this day. She was old now, her hair white and her movements slow. But her mind remained sharp and her passion for conservation had never dimmed. She stood with the elder keeper, now also ancient beyond measure, and watched as the first group of Scarix were prepared for transport to their home world. "We did it," she said softly. "We actually saved them." The elder keeper's body language conveyed profound satisfaction. "We did. Together. Neither of our species could have accomplished this alone, but together, we achieved what seemed impossible." Historians would later mark this moment as a turning point in galactic civilization. It was not the first time different species had cooperated, but it was the first time cooperation had been built on the foundation of protecting life rather than exploiting resources or gaining territory. The human-keeper partnership became a model studied by civilizations across multiple galaxies. Universities taught courses on collaborative conservation. Young beings of many species came to Sanctuary to learn the methods developed there. The planet became a symbol of what was possible when differences were celebrated rather than feared. But at its heart, Sanctuary remained what it had always been, a place where vulnerable creatures could sleep safely, where watchers stood guard not for profit or glory, but simply because it was the right thing to do, where life in all its forms was valued and protected. Every evening as the sun set over the grasslands, the same scene played out. Predator cubs settled down to sleep in the open, trusting and unafraid. Adult Scarix rested nearby, confident that dangers would not approach while they slumbered. And around them, in carefully positioned watchposts, humans and keepers maintained their vigil. They stood watch not because they were ordered to, not because